Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and hello, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very happy to be here today and have a roundtable with my former colleagues from Singapore, NTU, and I'm currently now at SCM in Hong Kong, City University. And we have been previously collaborating on a project, and I know that we're all interested in immersive VR, 360 video, or also VR experiences. And this is why we came together here today as a panel and look into this big question, challenged by choices. You know, when you're in a 3R environment, you have multiple viewing directions, and we will discuss this today in how far this supports a narrative or a continuous narrative is even possible in this environment. So I will start with an introduction, why I became interested in this topic at all. Then our next presenter will be Elke Raidel, and she will specifically talk about her latest project, the 7-step verse. It is a cinematic VR experience. Then we have Hans-Martin Rall and Emma Harper will do the presentation on behalf, well, it's a shared research project. They were looking into Shakespeare in virtual reality. And last but not least, Benjamin Seide, the lost film of Pontianak, another research project which looks into rediscovered or basically, it is a lost film, and he recreated scenes of it in virtual reality to experience it by the audience. So my starting point basically was my PhD thesis, and I was looking into crossroads and the difficulty of choices and decisions to make, and also what comes next when we have made our decision. We look back and wonder what would be today if we decided differently in the past and develop counterfactual thoughts. So a starting point for me was the visualization of crossroads, and I believe you're all very well familiar with this legendary quote by Jorge Luis Borges about the forking path narrative. And my background is in photography, so I initially tried to find a way to depict it in photographs. I started with looking into forking path structures. Also, you see in the trees how they branch out and fork into multiple directions. But I realized photography might not be the right medium to really express this idea. We have one singular viewing direction. It is a flat two-dimensional image on the wall. So I was looking for other possibilities, and I came into this amazing labyrinth in Versailles. I was very lucky. In 2012, I had a residency here in Paris in La Cité des Arts, and this brought me to this environment. And going into this, what looks very structured and well organized from above, but being inside, everything looks the same. And I was overhearing people wondering in which direction to go, where did we actually come from? And this was so much connected to what I was actually trying to visualize. So again, I took panoramic images. And what you see in the image at the top, I have multiple vanishing points. And this is already a starting point to create a confusion for the viewer. But still, even as a panoramic image on the wall, you can look in all directions, browse along the image, and you don't get this really immediate sense of looking into multiple directions or needing to make a choice. So I came across an amazing environment, a 360-degree video screen at the ZKM in Karlsruhe, and this proved to be the ideal environment for my concept, for my idea, and also for these images. In this environment, you're challenged to look into different directions. You don't just walk in and stay there, but you're really interested in looking around and are transported again into this original scenario of the labyrinth. This whole project was enhanced by sound, by audio, omnidirectional sound in multiple languages, people expressing their confusion. And in this way, it worked very well to create a starting point of getting the audience kind of confused. So this all culminated in a book which I published last year, Choices, Decisions and Counterfactuals in the Fine Arts. And I looked in one chapter specifically how this is expressed in linear narratives. And here are a few examples. I won't go too much into detail, but just to give you an idea, in a linear movie, we often deal with the possible what-ifs, what would have happened if something happened differently. And a lot of directors are expressing this in their narratives. For instance, in the first image you see here on the top left, this is from Blind Chance by Kieślowski. He starts with a very normal linear narrative, but at some point it interrupts and we go back to this moment when our protagonist needs to catch a train or misses the train. And again, we see how his life would evolve if he missed the train. And again, it is interrupted at some point. We go back to the train station and see another option. In the second example here, Parallel Lives, the sliding doors, we have a similar situation. Our protagonist misses or catches the train, but here the narrative is interwoven, and we see the possibility of the actor being in one position or in the other position, almost like two different actors interwoven throughout the whole movie. And then the movie classic, It's a Wonderful Life. We also have this idea, but here we have the power of higher beings, and our protagonist gets the chance through the eyes of an angel to look back into the world which he tried to leave and see what would have happened without him being on Earth. And he decides not to commit suicide. So I skip the other possible narratives. I just go to Alors René, Smoking, No Smoking, where we have very clearly signposted the different possibilities throughout the movie. It started as a theater play, and we always get to see this is what happens if we light the cigarette, or this happens if we don't light the cigarette. So here it is really explained in all the individual steps. And also the last movie I want to point to, the Mr. Nobody, which I called the cloud model. Here we have a lot of different snippets, and we see our protagonist as an old man looking back. Again, we have the situation at a train station, and he has to decide as a young boy if he wants to leave with his divorcing mother or stay with his father. And here the narrative is split in a lot of individual small fragments. For sure, we have interactive movies which have many more possibilities. And, oh, that was fast. Very sensitive now. Sorry. Okay. Oh, well, good. Okay. So when I started working in Singapore, I fell in love with another structure of a forking path garden, the Chinese Yunnan garden at NTU campus. And as this garden should be redeveloped and refurbished in some ways, we decided, the team of Benjamin Seide and Ross Williams, who looked into the sound, to make immersive experience out of this garden. We started with linear 360 video, and then continued in a full immersive experience with different content. And as I was interested in the possibilities of choices, I looked into the I Ching, the Book of Chances, and gave the user the freedom to basically choose everything in this garden. So you basically start in... no, it doesn't respond. Any specific direction I need to hold it to?
Tech support, please.
Okay. I hope it doesn't run through. Good. So, I think I can just continue to the walkthrough. Then you get a better idea of the project. This should run now as a video. So you can see here we have different content, and this one here is the Garden of Changes. And in the Garden of Changes, we don't like the audio if it plays. Yeah, so maybe you can mute it, that would be great. So at the entrance of the garden, the viewer is invited, or the user is invited to pose a question, and for which he or she seeks an answer. And walking through that garden, coming to a lot of different crossroads, there are 3 coins, and these coins can be tossed. And okay. Well, and according to the I Ching, you generate a broken or continuous line, and you walk through this garden with your own narrative in mind, pondering at each turning point about the direction you take, about your own individual question, your own individual narrative, which you bring into this garden. And in the end, when you reach the final point in the garden, you get your I Ching reading based on what the coins at the crossroads generated for you. So, if you're interested, I'm very happy to show the walkthrough to you after our session, but I don't want to interrupt you now any further, and would like to hand over to Elke Raidel, who will share about the 7-step verse.
Okay. Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, good morning or afternoon. Let me introduce myself. I'm Elke Reidel. I'm an artist, filmmaker, and researcher from Austria, actually from Linz. And I'm living in Asia now for more than 20 years in Taiwan and in Singapore. I'm assistant professor at NTU Singapore, working there in 2 film departments, in the ADM, School for Art, Design and Media, and the WeCanWe School for Communication and Information. And the title of my talk is The 7-Step Verse, Performing the City in Cinematic VR. And this is really my first step into the metaverse. And I will share mostly my concept about what I was thinking about, what I can shoot in this with this technology. And for the technical part, really my colleague who is also here today, Benjamin Seide, was really the one who is an expert in that field. Yeah, I'm a filmmaker, experimental filmmaker, shooting my films mostly in China or in areas that came under Chinese development. I'm experienced in working with restrictions and shooting in public spaces, either in Africa, China or Singapore. And this also really shaped my filmmaking, as I have started to use performative acts as a form of narration, much like working like a documentary theater in situ. And I often have to rely on improvisation. So in my work, I'm always looking for new ways of narratives, incorporating also pop songs, performative expressions, and various texts that I collect from advertisements, real estate promotion texts, and so on. Okay, now. Maybe this direction.
If there are problems, say next time, then we change. Okay,
Next. Ah, yes, this. So I just published a book. Yeah, this is my book, and it's really the culmination of my filmmaking for the past 20 years under the title of Haunted Spaces: Cinema, Heterotopia, and China's Hyper-Urbanization, published by NTUCCA. That's the Contemporary Art Center in Singapore. And yeah, I have the book with me if anyone is interested. Yes, I'm exploring topics of rapid urbanization in East and Southeast Asia. And because I have been living in this part of the world most of my life. And I'm interested, as I said, interested in areas that come under China's infrastructural development, such as the Chinese investments in Africa, or the copy of my hometown in Austria, which was replicated near Shenzhen. Of haunted spaces refers to what Foucault has termed as heterotopias, meaning parallel spaces that are accumulating different times and different cultures and countries within one place, just like a theme park would be, or a colony, a ghost city, or a copied city. Just to give you some idea about some of these areas I'm interested in. Yeah, I create in my work a discursive space for thinking about how we live and how human senses interact with modernist architectural ideas in different Asian cultures. And I have developed a cinematic language that is not just documentary or fiction, but it's really a hybrid form of narrative, creating a space of thought embedded in visual and acoustic spaces. And I'm using performative acts as a form of narrative. Yeah, next slide. That's the title of my first VR, the seven-step verse. It's a performative virtual reality, cinematic virtual reality work that explores Singapore's iconic modernist shopping malls and the relation between bodies and urban in the 7 different scenarios, sites, and interventions. And what I want to tell is the stories of the hidden, unrecognized dimensions of everyday in life in Asia, reading into the aspects of alienation, fragmentation, and migration, among other effects of modernism. So in these shopping malls that I was interested in are famous architectures from the 60s and 70s, built by famous architects as utopian ideas of living in the city. And nowadays these shopping malls have a different purpose and are often used by the workforce from Southeast Asia that keeps the city going. So it's a lot of migrant workers and domestic helpers. So these shopping malls become like cities within cities. One shopping mall is occupied by Thai community, the other one by Philippine community. And so in a sense, these are also heterotopias. Yes, the 7-step verse refers to also, I was looking for a kind of structure for my film. It's only 9 minutes, and I was looking into what Italo Calvino has tried in his novel, The Invisible Cities, exploring imagination inimaginable through the description of cities divided in chapters, more like a prose poems. So each of these cities belongs to a structure or a pattern or a hidden division. And I found that there is a Chinese poet who had created also a literary form. His name is Zhao Zhi, and it is the quatrain of 7 steps. So you would create a poem in 7 steps, and it is used to describe someone's quickness and wit and dexterity in literary creativity. So next slide. What I did was like choosing 7, the number 7 as a kind of structure. I have 7 locations, 7 performers, and 7, what else? Yes, everything was about the number 7. And as I said, I headed out with 7 performers into these places, in these shopping malls, and we were like performing there in situ, creating a space of thought embedded in acoustic and visual spaces and playing with the sight. And the challenge of working with 360-degree video in comparison to my filmmaking so far was that there is a static camera. It cannot be moved around. It has 6 lenses, and between the 6 lenses there are stitching lines. So when you work with the performers, you have to be really careful where are these performers moving around and where are they looking at, because they might step on this stitching line, which is then a break in the image. Yeah? Another problem was the sound. As we are shooting 360 degree, we have to hide somewhere. So the sound, people cannot be visible in the image. And another challenge was the COVID and that we didn't have any shooting permits. So I was thinking, what kind of film can I shoot if I don't have a shooting permit in public space? And I was, next slide. I was observing these places, what is happening in these places. And as I said, most of these shopping malls are used for like agencies for domestic helpers, and I was copying actually their advertisements, and also we had COVID, so everyone was dressed up with these gloves and with this protection clothes. Next slide. So I took my performers and I dressed them up like on the advertisement, and we go to these shopping malls and we start to clean them. So this is actually the performance that we did. We went to the public space and we start to clean the shopping malls. Yes, next slide. So what I want to do with also these performances is that we have a performer, and it helps us. It's not much doing this performer, but it helps us to walk around in the public space, to interact with people, and to look around what we could otherwise not see. Yeah, what's the next slide? So, for example, this is the Sim Lim Tower in Singapore. It has these different colors. So I dress up my performer in these different colors of the architecture and let them walk through that spaces and interact with people and with the place. Next slide. That's the People's Park complex, also built by a very iconic building in Singapore, built by a famous architect. And maybe next slide should be a short video. No, not this one. Sorry, next one. We keep on going. Next one. This one is broken, actually. Yeah, okay, let me talk first about the acoustic space, because as I just said, we cannot really record the sound on the spot. So what I do is I collect texts that I use for my sound design. And in this case, I was inspired by Georges Perec in his book Spaces of Spaces, where he gave a practical manual to actually walk through the streets through Paris and read everything that you can read on the street signs and the advertisement and so on. So what we did is we walked through these shopping malls and read everything that we can read from the signs. And this kind of abstract text become then the sound design. So I'm creating a textual material that is like a performance circulating through words, describing the space that various bodies and objects are surrounded. So maybe the next one should be a video. Play. Yeah, you can make the sound a bit louder.
I facial treatment and eye uncomfortable sensitive therapy. My eye bag also reduced after applying the cream. Hand relaxing treatment, shoulder neck treatment, body massage, Chuan drill and noodle, cross strips, Marie Vetor, hairless wound, Hainanese delicacy. Hainanese delicacy means such the fresh Susan Chan. All your beauty, private, no
Yeah, so the idea is that in 360 degree, there's always something happening around in no matter in which direction you turn. So I use this performer as researchers of spaces wandering to look at the present phenomena, such as the transformation of the urban and character walking around, and we can witness what surrounds them. Maybe just one more slide, just to conclude. The next one. Yeah, that's my next project. It's for the Cultural Capital of Europe in 2024 in Upper Austria, and it has two parts. One is an immersive storytelling on a train, and the second will be also 360-degree video. And in short, it's about a scientist from the future who is coming back to the present to explore the area of this special region in Upper Austria that is no longer accessible, but only through the VR technology. And maybe that might be the future for this kind of technology, to see places that we can no longer access. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah.
Use and be careful to don't press.
Oh, so just this one.
Press, yes.
Okay, I will try with the remote, but I might end up shouting for next slide. So I'm going to be talking about an ongoing research project to adapt works of Shakespeare to immersive media, for which I am a research assistant, and Hannes, my co-author, who unfortunately couldn't be in Paris today, is the principal investigator and director. So I'm going to do my best to tell you about the project and about how specifically we approached issues relating to narrative and storytelling within one particular strand of the ongoing work, that being Pericles VR, which is a project that aims to create a gamified, animated adaptation of the lesser-known Shakespeare play Pericles, Prince of Tyre. And the project is funded by Singapore's Ministry of Education, which sort of provides a bit of framework for understanding our approach to the treatment of the original play vis-a-vis the use of VR. That worked. Great. So this project is the latest stage in a longer-term collaboration which Hannes has been involved with that brings together animators and visual and technical developers from Singapore and Shakespeare scholars based at the Shakespeare Institute at the University of Birmingham in the UK. And the broad project aim is focused on investigating how works of Shakespeare might be adapted for digital animation and immersive media more specifically. And in this most recent stage of the project, the focus has been placed particularly on how we might think about non-linear storytelling in VR when paired with the very linear narratives drawn from the original Shakespeare plays, and how this mediation might take into consideration particular forms of digital media based on the nature of the specific plays that we are dealing with. And with that in mind, the decision to adapt Pericles for this fully immersive VR experience was based on several sort of factors embedded in the nature of the play itself, which we drew out with the help of the collaboration with the literary Shakespeare scholars who are part of our research team. So the play is it's a bit of a strange one. It's got a very unexpected and at times fantastical trajectory, and brings in some characters and themes that have presented serious challenges to directors when staging the play for the traditional stage. So it starts with incest and ends with prostitution, and what comes between that is also a little bit unexpected. And there's been a very sort of quite a tradition of radical adaptation of the play, rooted in the fact that it doesn't feature in Shakespeare's first folio, which has allowed sort of scholars to question to a much greater extent than we see with other Shakespeare plays. To what extent can the play actually be considered Shakespearean at all? Which has meant that people have maybe treated it in a more kind of aggressive way than some of the other more canonical Shakespeare texts. And so we are really working within this radical history of interpretation by exploiting the potential that animated VR offers us to recast the characters as anthropomorphic animals within a Southeast Asian sort of context. And how exactly this was achieved visually will be explored a little bit later. Oh dear. Okay. So regarding sort of the overall idea of this panel specifically, what was really a key concern of the approach to the development of this VR experience was how to balance sort of fidelity to Shakespeare's original play, in particular its narrative trajectory, with the potential that VR offers for creative world building and exploration in a non-linear fashion. And so what the conclusion that we came to after sort of much discussion with the interdisciplinary project team and some early visual development was this two-strand approach, which aimed to kind of mediate this divide between the linear and the non-linear and the self-guided and the guided. So it's currently a work in progress, but essentially the final VR experience will consist of 4 fully immersive gamified episodes, which are fully immersive in VR and provide the user with the opportunity to make decisions and solve problems based on episodes from the original text. But these 4 game episodes will be connected by 2D animated cutscenes, which advance the narrative and connect the episodes in a very non-interactive, linear way. And these cutscenes are based on the original plot, and they provide sort of the textual context required to understand the significance of the episodes that the player is engaging with. And really this was rooted in this acknowledgement that when coming at the project from an educational perspective, there are sort of different things that we would want students to get out of the experience at different points, and so different storytelling requirements at different points in our narrative. And this is just really a summary of these 2 different approaches to narrative and storytelling that we have adopted. And maybe the thing to highlight is that these gamified elements, what's important is that it gives the player the sense that they are making decisions which shape the overall narrative of the play, even if in fact the narrative trajectory is very much in line with Shakespeare's original play. And we sort of leveraged on the fact that the play, Pericles itself, has quite an unpredictable narrative that's probably going to be unknown to most of the players. So it creates a sense that they are shaping their own journey through the text. And then that these cutscenes, as I'll show later, these cutscenes are very much embedded in the immersive environments of the game episodes. Oh dear. Can I have the next slide? Oh, no, maybe not that next one. Previous. Okay. So, okay, I'll just play. Can you play the video? So this is just a video showing the very early demo of what the first game episode is going to look like. Obviously, it's not been fully modeled and textured yet. But essentially, the player will be placed within this environment, which is designed to resemble the sort of a stylized version of a temple at Angkor in Cambodia. And they'll have, at this point, they'll have the freedom to explore and engage with the environment on their own terms. But it sort of leads them towards the end of the sort of the space where they will encounter these 2 characters. And what will happen is there'll be a motion trigger where once the player sort of gets close enough to these characters, the sort of the game element of this first episode will begin. Okay, next. Oops, no, next one. Okay. Okay, and this is just the storyboarding for what this actual gameplay will look like eventually. So in the play, when the protagonist is faced with this riddle given to him by the king, and the riddle requires Pericles to make a decision about whether he reveals the king's incestuous relationship with his daughter, or whether he tries to hide it. But ultimately, what happens is he is he solves the riddle, but then is forced to flee. And so we have sort of used this as the basis for the first game element. So the player will be presented with this riddle. Next slide. Oh, there. And required to sort of interact with the UI to make the decision. And what is key maybe to highlight here is that that despite the fact the player has the option of giving the sort of the wrong answer and following different paths, ultimately they'll be led towards making the decisions and that advance the narrative in line with Shakespeare's original sort of chronology. And I mentioned that the cutscenes are going to be integrated into the actual virtual environment. So this is just, I don't know if you can play. The picture on the right is the video, just to show sort of the very two-dimensional nature of the sort of the animation that we've got going on in the cutscenes. So what will happen is after the game episode ends, audiovisual cues will sort of guide the player over to the panel on the left where this animation will play, which will advance the narrative to the next game episode. And there are the cutscenes take different visual approaches. Okay, this is fine. Basically, the cutscenes are stylistically very different, but influenced by Southeast Asian design and sort of artistic traditions. So the first one was based on temple relief carving, and this one here, which follows the third game episode, which takes place on a ship, is based on sort of indigenous Southeast Asian map-making traditions. And the other two are based on paper cutting and shadow puppets. So just to finish, the thing to maybe emphasize is that our project, we would argue, offers a case study through which we can discuss about how we could maybe combine linear and non-linear approaches to storytelling within the same experience, allowing for an engagement in our context with Shakespeare's original play, his characters, his language and the plot, while also facilitating the autonomous world discovery and interaction that VR offers. And when it comes to what stories we might be able to tell in adaptation to VR, I think it would suggest that maybe we could look beyond sort of the canon, especially with Shakespeare, to see what opportunities some of the lesser known narratives can offer. Thanks. So I'll hand over to Benjamin now.
Hello. Okay, waiting for my PowerPoint slides, please. Hello, good morning. My name is Ben Seide. I'm also from the School of Art, Design, Media in Singapore. And I'm here to talk a little bit about my ongoing research project into creating cinematic virtual heritage for a lost film project, Pontianak, and today I want to specifically focus on issues we were discovering, findings in the context of storytelling and navigation. So I'll try the slide thing and let's see if it works. Yeah. Great. Okay, so just very briefly, the film in question, the Pontianak, was released in 1957, and it's a Malay language horror film with some comedic elements in it. And it was shot in Singapore, produced in Singapore, and it's inspired by rural Malayan folk tales about ghosts and demons. Of course, the most important being the title character, Pontianak. And this Pontianak character is still believed in today in Singapore and Malaysia by some people. Okay, so let me move on. Nope. Next. Okay. So in '57, the film was a huge success, kind of like an, B-movie production, but a box office hit. And they produced a sequel in the same year. So just 6 months later, they released the second part. And in '58, a third part. And the two big studios in Singapore produced between 1957 and '65 7 Pontianak films, just to give you an idea how popular the theme of this Pontianak ghost character became during these years. Okay, and then we'll move on. Yep. And today the film Pontianak is understood to be lost, the first and the second film, so there is no remaining copy of these two original films, despite their popularity, and they were even screened in Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur, and apparently they were even screened on television, but still there is no copy. The only film that survived is the third film, Sumpah Pontianak from 1958, and of course that was then quite an important visual reference for us. Okay, so we had numerous research questions when we started this project a while ago. Many, of course, surrounding the film's history, so film historic questions. Starting with what was actually the synopsis of the first film and why created it such a tremendous audience appeal, right? What was so fascinating in this first film for the audience? And then there were several questions, of course, regarding the aspect of creating cinematic virtual heritage. So starting with how to bring to life what is apparently lost, right? So quite a few questions. Today I want to actually circle a little bit around the idea of creating a homage to this lost film in a virtual reality experience by reviving a key scene from this film as some sort of walk-in movie, right? So we had this idea, like, how would a movie scene play out if we can just like walk into that scene? Okay. Okay, let's try. All right. So based on our findings regarding the filming locations, we created a Malayan Singaporean village from the early 20th century. We basically found out that the key scenes play in this village or around in the jungle. And we used mostly archival footage from the National Archives and visual references from the third film to create this village. And yeah, so there is also a little bit of a cultural heritage perspective in this project. And okay, so this is all right. So these are still images which did survive from the first film. This is depicting the husband and Chomel. And the actress this beautiful Chomel transforms into the spooky Pontianak. And that was actually what shocked the audience back then in '57 and kept them in their seats when that was never seen in a local film before, and that made that film a hit. So we found out that the key moment of this film is what we call the snakebite scene, when they walk together from the village into the jungle, and the husband gets bitten by a snake and demands that she sucks the poison out of his neck, so for him to survive. And of course, that's the one thing she's not allowed to do. She's cursed. She transformed earlier from a deformed person into this beautiful Chomel. If she gets in touch with human blood, she will, something will happen, and that something is she transforms into the Pontianak. Okay, so that was our idea. We recreate that scene in virtual reality as a VR scene to walk in. We pictured our two main actors, the husband and the wife, walking through the village into the jungle, and then the whole snake bite thing would play out, right? So this is an early test shot, and this is our first approach. We pictured that as a long 3-minute, one-take walk, them talking and walking. We wrote a film script, they're explaining a lot of things, they're chatting, and so on. We translated the village layout to an outdoor sports field. We used motion capture suits to capture our actors' performance. Oops, that was way too fast. Okay, I have to go. Can I go back a couple of slides? So we're still at approach 1. I only clicked one time. All right, okay. Let's go back. Sorry for that. Well, there is a delay here. I'm still trying to go back. Oh yeah, okay. So there's a little video which should be playing in the top, in the bottom right. If the tech can help play that video. No, not that one. The previous one. In the bottom right is a video. Okay. No. Okay. Then I'll just talk about it. So we shot this as one take. That was the idea, right? 3 minutes, and they're walking in an area of 40 by 30 meters, which is quite large for a motion capture performance. So the only viable option was to use these portable motion capture suits and then shoot it. And in the video, you would see them just like basically walk throughout the entire area there. That's actually Elke down there taking some documentation videos. Okay, so we go forward one slide. Maybe I'll just give you commands. Okay, so next slide, please. All right, so we put the motion capture into the VR environment, and what you see here is basically screen captured from the VR headset. Obviously, the husband is supposed to wear clothes, right? Not to be naked. But you can focus on what the viewer is doing. He has to teleport around. The studio setup where the VR experience is experienced is only like 3 by 3 meter or something. So he has to teleport a lot, right? Our finding was that most of the dialogue is actually lost because the user is so busy with following the two actors walking through the village, right? So by teleporting, like, oh, okay, I have to jump there and then turn around to look at them. So the story was basically lost, right? So we were quite disappointed. That's why we abandoned this relatively fast. Next slide, please. Which brings us to approach number 2. We had this motion capture performance already. We shortened it to 1 minute, and they just start behind the building and walk into this area where start to end. And in the green area, we put the user right into the end position where the main action will happen, right? And we thought like, okay, then we can guarantee he will not miss it. So in a way it worked, but there were still a lot of moments which were kind of missed. And the more concerning thing was that the limitation of being kind of like stuck there, but seeing that there is a big open space and not being able to go there was very irritating for the user. So we abandoned that approach as well. Next slide, please. So approach number 3 is kind of a compromise. We basically said, like, we still want the entire film script to play out, but if the user is too lazy to walk around and we don't want to keep him busy with navigation, we just play the entire scene around him, so in one circle. And then yeah, it just goes around him. And next slide, please. And then we see something in the next slide. So in the previous slide you saw that we captured that in the studio, so we needed a much shorter space. And our findings here were, yes, that works. So most of the story will be, seen, experienced by the viewer. He can follow the dialogue. There is very little of what he might lose, maybe 1 or 2 moments where he has to decide where to look at, but that's actually a little bit of fun. The only limitation was, okay, it is very limiting in terms of the space, right? But it kind of works. Okay, so next slide, please. And approach number 4 came out of a kind of like a little B-movie side project we did. We already had this kampong, this environment, and we thought okay, we're bringing an alien character, a female alien character, meeting the Pontianak, who's also a female character, and basically they're kind of not meeting first, and eventually in the story they're meeting. It's a linear story, and we took a completely different approach. We just captured very short scenes, little scenes, around 10. We used, I think, 8. So you see, we just placed them all over the environment, and the user is entirely free to move all the time. And basically, next slide, please. So this is, again, the capture of the environment. The user very quickly learns that he has to kind of find these characters, find the scenes, and exploring the environment becomes kind of like part of the story. And that was a very positive experience for the user, I have to say. So there is, of course, if it's a dialogue-driven narrative, there is a huge potential that the user will miss something, or the dialogue can only be triggered once the user is in a certain proximity. But we had a non-dialogue story, so for us it worked out perfectly. Okay, and then I think I'm already at the end of my talk. Thank you very much for listening. And that's it. Yeah.
So I think we all grab a microphone and you come to the front.
Yes.
And
questions? Yeah.
yes, so thank you very much all for your different approaches, which including a narrative in 360-degree media with linear video, interactive video, or really the full-scale, room-scale experience where you basically have all the choices. And I think Ben made already quite clear the difficulties and with the different approaches you explored. So your different approaches, did you get user feedback, or how did you come up with this doesn't work?
This doesn't work. Yeah, it was for the first one. It was very clear early on. I think we only showed it to a few people. The last one you saw was just exhibited at an exhibition in Kuala Lumpur, where I kind of observed how quickly the audience picks up on finding this little stories which play out.
And Ella, how do you feel like your narrative is impression after I saw your work? It's really based on the sound. The audio is a very important component of it.
What is getting lost here at the presentation is the immersive feeling that you are in that space and actually you're looking around. It's getting, of course, totally lost. I also have to say that I think that it is very post-production heavy. I mean, Benjamin did most of the work of stitching the images and deleting the tripod, and I feel like this. To make a work like this is quite intense in post-production. Yeah. But I have to say that, I showed my film at the Singapore International Film Festival, and it was the first time that they had a section for VR films, and it feels like there is a need for more content, and it's not yet there. So I feel like there are possibilities to work in this medium.
And Emma, your and Hannes' project is based on a linear narrative, but now really very much as almost like a game with a lot of possibilities and choices. Do you also do beta testing? Because I mean, the production as an animation is really work intensive.
Yeah, so we're not at that stage yet. At the moment, most of the sort of feedback has been through the collaborative meetings between the visual development team and the Shakespeare scholars. So a lot of the feedback that we've had so far has been very much from Shakespeare scholars with a background in studying sort of traditional performance, or scholars who are also working on sort of Shakespeare, sort of more stagings of plays within virtual environments. So that's sort of the feedback that we've had so far. But I think, definitely as we get closer to having something more complete, especially because the intended audience of the game is sort of secondary school children, having some sort of testing with them is definitely on the horizon.
Yeah, thank you. I think in regard of the time, we should open the questions to the audience. It's just a bit bright here, so I can't see if... Yes, please. Do you have a microphone for the audience?
Hello? Okay. Hi, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative to see how you handle your production stages and post-production. I'm wondering, in terms of development or pre-production, what types of techniques or strategies are you engaging with? Is it a straight screenwriting process or outlining, character descriptions, or are you also taking that in different directions? And Elke, I think this ties in also with the webs that you showed in terms of preparing the mind in order to enter production. So I'm wondering, just from all of you, what are the development or pre-production techniques that you use to kind of put it on paper or give sense to the project prior to going into the production stage?
Well, I just answer mine. It was quite based on improvisation. I mean, all I know is that I have the locations, that I have the performers, and then we go to these places and we see what we can do, because we have to hide more or less. Yeah. But if you have more time to work with your location, definitely I'm gonna work more on the script and on the staging of the scenes. Yeah. But in this case, it was totally based on improvisation. Basically shot on one day. We were a bus full of performers and going from one location to the next.
And we also got kicked out of one shopping mall, right?
Yes.
So I guess we actually started with the character and environment designs. So the character development was the first stage. Went through a series of different options, starting with sort of human characters, and then from that developed this sort of two-strand. The 2D animation was very much sort of storyboarded in relation to an abridged version of the play, which actually, despite the fact that I've sort of tried to highlight how important Shakespeare's original text is, that was done quite quickly. So we took the original play and figured out which elements were not, which episodes were not intrinsic to advancing the narrative, and then thought about and then kind of cut that down. So that it was very much led by the visual side, and then we sort of came to kind of slot in the plot. And fortunately, the play has these very clearly inbuilt sort of game episodes, these decision-making opportunities. So it's really just a matter of making a list of those and picking which ones sort of sounded like they might be the most interesting to interact with in first-person VR.
Maybe one more question.
Thank you very much for this very interesting panel. I have again a question about Shakespeare, I was very interested in this project, but I wonder what the game finally does to the structure of Shakespeare's play. You see, because as you said, there are perhaps some choice elements in the play, but the thing is that actually no.
Yeah.
When you're the viewer, the spectator has not a choice at all. Finally, so how do you manage this?
Yeah,
kind of paradox or conflict.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is the sort of the fact that the play is very much structured around this personal journey. So the first person VR experience kind of takes the viewer really. It's difficult. What word do you use? Do you use viewer? Do you use user? Do you use player? But essentially, it sort of takes them from being the spectator to sort of almost being. It's sort of a narrative making experience rather than an observation. And overall, sort of the conclusion of the play is very much, the play ends in a sort of a happy ending with a reunion. So we do reach that point. But the ability to deviate from the initial narrative is sort of encapsulated within these game episodes. So, for example, the third game episode involves it's an episode where Pericles and his deceased wife, who isn't actually dead, and their newborn child are caught in a storm, and Pericles has to throw the body of his wife over the edge of the boat to stabilize the vessel and progress the narrative. So within that game episode, the player has the chance to throw various different things off the boat, so interact with the environment in a way that doesn't happen in the original play, because in the original play he's told by the sailors you have to throw the body overboard to restabilize. So it's almost these sorts of slight deviations rather than huge sort of narrative shifts. So it's sort of.
But still, you imagined or you invented alternative storylines.
Yeah, so I suppose sort of maybe alternative sort of micro narratives and counterfactuals. Yeah, there is that sense, but then keeping sort of the overall trajectory within the broad sort of narrative arc. And there are elements of the play that we have removed. So Pericles goes to some different locations in the play that we have missed out for sort of length's sake. Yeah.
There's one more question here.
Hi, I'm Angelo Vermeulen from the Seeds Collective. We're also working with digital design and interactivity. And I was, from a personal perspective, very interested. How much are you influenced by contemporary game culture and existing VR experiences? I'm thinking of, for example, the Valve game Alex, which is supposed to be one of the best virtual reality experiences in terms of interactivity. Do you look at this? Do you analyze this? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, I can say for the Garden of Changes, I had clearly a game reference. Unfortunately, I'm really bad with names. I saw this in an exhibition in Dundee at I think it was at the V&A. They had a game special exhibition. And it was really about being slow. It was an elderly lady who went to a graveyard. And I enjoyed this so much that you don't have to run and shoot and do something totally different. The slower you were, the better you succeeded in the game. And this was my personal game reference. But yes, indeed, I had one.
It's from Tale of Tales.
Oh, thank you.
That's the studio that made it. Yeah. Great. Okay. But no other. I mean, because there is a lot of exploration and interactivity in gaming, of course, I think it would be very interesting to compare. And I agree, there's a lot of shooting and there's a lot of cliches and storytelling cliches, of course. But I would be interested to see comparisons personally.
Yeah, but it was really this moment. It doesn't have to be about being fast and succeeding in this normal way of succeeding, but really reversing the behavior in a game. And that's also what I tried in the Garden of Changes, to become really like a meditative experience instead of, okay, I have a goal and I have to do this in a very specific time and to go a very specific route. No, I have all the freedom and all the changes, and I just can enjoy being in this environment and look around.
Is there any other question? Last question? Yes? The last question, and after you can ask other question.
Hi, thanks for all your interesting talks. My name's Sarah. I was just wondering, because there's such obvious challenges with taking an existing linear story and trying to convert it into that interactive space. Do you think that you could take an existing story and as like a jumping off point for a more sensory or experiential kind of version of it, rather than trying to kind of force a linear narrative? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, you could. And I mean, the thing that immediately comes to mind thinking about our project and about the play Pericles is there has been a recent sort of staging for a physical stage where a director sort of took the play and reinterpreted it for use with for young people with autism, and really placed emphasis on sort of the physicality and sort of some of the very sensory experiential elements of a play which focuses around a personal journey sort of linked to the sea. So there's this movement and there's a use of sound, and I do think that is something that could definitely translate with our source text very well to VR, obviously with a completely different sort of focus and intention to what we're doing, but yeah, I think so.
Thanks a lot. We can applaud. Yeah.